All right, so welcome back for another deep dive. You guys know how this works.
Yeah.
You send us something interesting that you've seen,
Right.
and you want us to kind of take a deep dive into it and try to pull out some of the interesting nuggets. So today we're looking at a Fox News segment that you guys sent us about former President Trump returning to the White House.
Yeah.
So let's just jump right into it. The segment starts off with this buzz.
This energy.
This energy, right? Yeah, this energy. Trump is back, and things are already...
Things are moving.
Things are moving.
Fast. We see right away the stock market reacting to Trump's return.
Oh, yeah?
Nuclear stocks, for example, jumped up 9%.
9%. Wow.
Which could signal that investors are anticipating Trump to revive his focus on nuclear energy. And, during his previous administration, he was a strong advocate for revitalizing that industry.
Right. And it's not just the markets that are reacting. Trump is already making changes. He's fired 1,000 Biden appointees.
1,000.
1,000. And he said this is just the beginning.
Wow.
He's also targeting those DEI offices.
DEI.
Which stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Yeah.
And is looking to reform civil service regulations.
Okay.
Which would make it easier to basically hire and fire federal employees.
This is significant because those regulations were originally designed to protect federal employees from politically motivated dismissals and ensure a more stable and experienced workforce.
Yeah.
So by reforming them, Trump is aiming to give the executive branch more direct control over that workforce.
Yeah. And some people are pretty fired up about this, to say the least. The segment even mentions Al Sharpton being pretty vocal in his opposition.
Well, yeah, Sharpton's reaction kind of underscores the concerns that many have about the potential consequences of these reforms. Critics worry that these changes could lead to a less experienced workforce and politicize what should be nonpartisan positions.
Right. Now, here's where things get really interesting. The segment includes a clip of Trump taking questions from reporters.
Cool.
Which, if you recall, is a pretty different approach from how Biden handled the press during his time in office.
Biden rarely had those unscripted back and forths with reporters and mostly stuck to pre-approved questions.
Yeah, so this is a pretty big...
This shift in communication style is a major departure from the previous administration.
Yeah. And
it's already raising eyebrows. It suggests a potentially more transparent, albeit unpredictable, relationship with the media.
And Trump touches on a few hot-button topics in this Q&A. He mentions the possibility of using recess appointments, which is a powerful tool that lets a president fill vacancies without Senate approval. He's also asked about the success of some of his business ventures during his presidency, and he briefly discusses the decision to relocate his operations.
These are all loaded questions that have sparked controversy in the past. And his willingness to address them head-on, however briefly, signals that he's ready to re-engage on these potentially sensitive subjects.
And all of this is taking place in the middle of a meeting with tech leaders.
Oh, wow.
About a massive AI investment, which brings us to a comment from Brian Kilmeade, one of the Fox News hosts. He sounds pretty frustrated that during this meeting, reporters are focused on topics like potential January 6th pardons.
Oh, geez.
And Trump's cryptocurrency ventures, instead of digging into the AI initiative.
So Kilmeade's frustration highlights a recurring tension. In media coverage, there's the drive to hold leaders accountable for past actions, especially those considered controversial.
Right.
And then there's the need to engage with current pressing issues, like this potential AI investment.
Yeah.
This type of investment could have a major impact on everything, from the economy and national security to the very nature of work itself.
It's a bit of a head-scratcher, isn't it?
It is.
You have these tech giants talking about something that could be a game changer. Yeah. And the focus gets pulled towards past events.
Kilmeade seems to be suggesting that by fixating on the past, we risk missing the bigger picture and failing to engage with the challenges and opportunities of the future.
Yeah.
And that's a tension worth considering.
Absolutely. And to wrap up their segment, Kilmeade and his co-host, Stuart Varney, seem to be pretty optimistic about Trump's return.
They point to what they see as Trump's trademark, energetic leadership style. Those open press conferences, the way he empowers his cabinet secretaries. They believe this is a sign of a more effective and transparent administration to come.
But isn't that style also something that's been criticized in the past?
It certainly has its potential downsides. While a more hands-on and assertive approach can lead to quicker decisions and a sense of momentum, it also carries risks.
Right.
It could increase the potential for missteps and conflicts, create a perception of impulsivity, and raise concerns about a concentration of power that might not allow for adequate checks and balances. It's a double-edged sword, and its effectiveness and long-term consequences will likely be debated for years to come.
So a lot to unpack there. What are your thoughts so far?
I think what's striking is the sheer speed at which things are unfolding. Trump is back, and he's making bold moves, sending shockwaves through the political landscape and beyond. The question is, what will the lasting impact of these actions be?
That is the question, isn't it? And we'll continue exploring that as we dive deeper into this Fox News segment. It's fascinating to see how Trump's return has just instantly reignited these discussions about leadership style and media focus.
Absolutely.
Hitting the fast-forward button on the news cycle.
And Kilmeade's frustration with the media's line of questioning brings up an important point. Are we as a society so preoccupied with past controversies that we risk overlooking critical issues like this AI investment?
It does seem a bit ironic, doesn't it? I mean, we're potentially on the cusp of a technological revolution, and the spotlight is on events that happened years ago.
This actually touches upon a broader challenge in our current media environment. Finding the balance between holding leaders accountable for their past actions while also addressing pressing current issues.
Yeah, it feels like we're constantly pulled between looking back and looking forward. So how do we navigate this, especially with someone like Trump, who's known for grabbing attention and controlling the narrative?
Well, I think a good starting point is recognizing our own biases. We all come to these discussions with preconceived notions shaped by our personal experiences and values. Being aware of these biases allows us to step back and objectively evaluate the information we're receiving.
That's a great point. It's so easy to get caught up in echo chambers, whether it's social media or certain news outlets, where we're only exposed to opinions that reinforce our existing beliefs.
Exactly, and that's why it's crucial to actively seek out diverse perspective, even those that challenge our assumptions. Engaging with a variety of viewpoints, even those we might initially disagree with, can help us develop a more nuanced and informed understanding of complex issues.
But it's tough, isn't it? Especially in today's political climate, which feels so polarized. It seems like the middle ground is shrinking and everyone's digging into their trenches. How do we have productive conversations when people are so entrenched in their positions?
You're absolutely right. It's a challenge. But I believe it starts with trying to find common ground. Even when there are fundamental disagreements on ideology or values, there are often shared interests or concerns that can serve as a starting point for dialogue.
So instead of focusing solely on the points of division, we should look for those areas of agreement and build from there.
Precisely. Now, I know this can be difficult, particularly when the media often seems to thrive on conflict and sensationalism.
It's like they're incentivized to keep us divided, isn't it?
That's one of the realities of our current media landscape, unfortunately. But that's precisely why it's so important for us to be discerning consumers of information. We need to seek out diverse sources, engage in thoughtful discussions with people who hold different viewpoints, and ultimately be active participants in shaping our own understanding of the world.
So we need to be mindful of our biases, seek out diverse perspectives, and try to find common ground. Are there any other tips you can share for navigating this increasingly complex information landscape?
I'd say be wary of easy answers and simplistic narratives. The world is a complicated place, and most issues don't have black and white solutions. Be skeptical of those who claim to have all the answers, or who demonize anyone with a different perspective. Embrace complexity, be open to nuance, and be willing to grapple with those difficult questions.
That's good advice. It's tempting to look for simple solutions, especially when we're feeling overwhelmed or uncertain.
Exactly. And that's why I think these deep dives are so valuable. We're taking the time to explore the nuances of complex topics and engage in meaningful discussions. It's a reminder that learning is an ongoing process, and there's always more to discover and understand.
I completely agree, and I love that we're doing this together with you, our listeners. It's like we're all on this journey of discovery, trying to make sense of this crazy world.
That's a collective effort, and that's what makes it so rewarding. We're not just passively absorbing information. We're actively engaging with it, questioning it, and searching for meaning and understanding.
And speaking of finding meaning, let's circle back to Trump's return and its potential implications for the future. We've talked about the immediate reactions, but what about the long-term effects? What kind of lasting impact could his return have on the American political landscape?
That's a question that will be debated for years to come. However, it's safe to say that Trump's return has the potential to reshape the political landscape. in profound ways. His populist appeal, his willingness to challenge norms, and his ability to mobilize a loyal base of supporters have already significantly impacted American politics. His return to the White House could further amplify those trends.
So we could see a deepening of the partisan divide, a further erosion of trust in institutions, and a continued shift towards more personality-driven politics.
Those are definitely possibilities. And they're trends that many observers are concerned about. But it's also possible that Trump's return could galvanize opposition and lead to a resurgence of civic engagement and political activism. We saw this happen in the wake of his election in 2016, with the rise of movements like the Women's March and the increased mobilization of progressive voters.
So in a way, his return could be a catalyst for change, both positive and negative.
Exactly. It's a complex situation with a wide range of potential outcomes. While it's impossible to predict with certainty what the long-term consequences of Trump's return will be, it's clear that we're entering a period of significant political and social change. How we respond to these challenges will determine the course of our nation for years to come.
So what does this mean for us, the everyday citizens trying to make sense of this turbulent landscape?
It means that our voices and actions matter now more than ever. We need to be informed, engaged, and active participants in our democracy. We need to hold our leaders accountable, demand transparency and integrity, and work towards bridging divides and finding common ground. The future of our nation depends on it.
Those are powerful words. It's a sobering reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping the future we want to see.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the key takeaways from this deep dive. It's not just about understanding complex issues, but also about recognizing our own agency and our collective responsibility to shape the world around us.
It's about taking ownership of our roles as citizens and actively participating in the process.
Exactly. Now we've covered a lot of ground here, and I know you, our listener, might have some questions or thoughts about what we've discussed. So let's shift gears a bit and delve into some of the feedback and questions we've received about this topic.
We always love hearing from you guys, our amazing listeners, and you've sent in some really insightful comments and questions about Trump's return. So let's dive right into that feedback and see what new perspectives we can uncover.
It's always valuable to explore a range of viewpoints and consider the questions that are on people's minds. So what's caught your attention?
Well, one listener, Sarah, brings up a point that I think a lot of people are wrestling with right now. She says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that while she understands the concerns about the potential downsides of Trump's leadership style, she also sees some positives in his more hands-on, energetic approach. She feels like things have become a bit stagnant, and she appreciates that Trump seems to be shaking things up and pushing for action.
That's a perspective we hear quite often. There's a certain appeal to a leader who projects an image of decisiveness and action, especially when there's a perception of gridlock or inefficiency in government. People crave progress and results, and a leader who appears to be actively pushing for those outcomes can be attractive, even if there are concerns about their methods or motives.
It's like that old saying, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, right?
Right.
Some people admire that bold, take-charge attitude. But on the other hand, we have another listener, David, who raises a different concern. He's worried about the long-term impact of Trump's return on the Republican Party. He fears that it will further solidify the party's embrace of populism and nationalism, potentially alienating moderate voters and making it harder for the party to appeal to a broader electorate.
That's a valid concern, and it reflects a larger debate happening within the Republican Party itself. There's a real tension between those who see Trump's brand of populism as the key to electoral success, and those who fear that it's leading the party down a path away from its traditional principles and toward a more divisive and exclusionary ideology.
So it's a bit of a crossroads for the Republican Party, wouldn't you say? They need to figure out what direction they want to take and what kind of identity they want to project moving forward.
Precisely. And the outcome of that internal debate will have significant implications for the future of American politics as a whole. Now we have one last comment to discuss before we wrap things up.
Okay.
This one comes from Maria, and she brings up the issue of trust. She says she's lost faith in both major political parties and feels like neither one truly represents her interests or values. She's wondering if there's any hope for a more centrist, unifying force to emerge in American politics.
That's a sentiment we hear from a lot of people who are feeling disillusioned with the current state of our political system. This increasing polarization, the focus on partisan battles rather than finding solutions, and the erosion of trust in institutions, it's left many feeling alienated and unrepresented.
Absolutely. There's a growing desire for a political alternative that prioritizes common ground and pragmatic solutions over ideological purity and partisan fighting. Whether that alternative takes the form of a third party, a movement within the existing parties, or something entirely new remains to be seen.
Well, one thing is for sure, we're living in some pretty interesting times. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the key takeaway is that we all have a responsibility to shape the future of our democracy. We can't afford to sit on the sidelines and just watch things unfold. We need to stay informed, stay engaged, and actively participate in the political process.
I wholeheartedly agree. And that begins with curiosity. Asking questions and seeking out different perspectives. It means engaging in thoughtful discussions even when they're challenging. And it means holding our leaders accountable and demanding better from our political system.
Well said. A huge thank you to all our listeners for joining us on this deep dive into former President Trump's return to the White House. We've explored the initial reactions, the potential long-term implications, and some of the key questions that this event has raised. Remember, your insights and perspectives are invaluable to this conversation. Keep those comments and questions coming, and stay tuned for more deep dives into the topics that matter most. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.